everybody, it's me, Laura, and today we're going to do another one of my play on words pots, the eggplant. Yep, Easter is coming, and I thought this will be fun. And I really, oh my gosh, I had a blast with this one. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and start out with a little bit of my terracotta clay. And this clay, I want to say it's about 1 inch in diameter. If you want to go smaller, absolutely. I do have another video on creating my terracotta pots, so if you want to check that out, please do. But anyways, I'm making a few of these little pots. I'm going to go ahead and form them up. Notice here I go from a ball into a teardrop, and I flatten at both ends with kind of making this cone-like shape. Once I have that though, I'm going to also bring in some of my Kemper cutters. I have the circle ones, and I like the largest one the best. I'll create a couple of little pieces, couple of circle pieces. Those will be my plates that will go under these pots. But for right now, I'm going to go in and bring my brown clay. I'm going to flatten this out on a number 4 setting. I'm going to take those same Kemper cutter circle cutters. I'm going to cut out some circles that will fit right on the top of these terracotta pots. This will be my ground, okay, that will be based into the pots themselves. I'll come back in later. I'll use a burnisher to kind of create a ground effect. But I'll put those on the top of these terracotta pots, and then I'll make up my plates. I'll also bring in some white clay. I'll create some strips from a flattened piece of white clay that will be flattened on a number 4 setting on my Atlas pasta machine. And those strips will then go around those little circles that will be my plates, and that'll be the rim for not only the plate itself, but also the terracotta pots as well. All right, so now we're going to start creating some miniature little clay eggs. And really, this is kind of a thing of your own style, you're just making little oval-like shape eggs. My rule of thumb on this, if you're trying to figure out, okay, how would this look? I like to go with the idea of making a ball and then creating kind of a teardrop form. So you're going to kind of make it a little bit pointed on one end, but not really, not pointed, not a complete point, but just kind of a rounded kind of pointed area, if that helps. It's hard to describe this. But you just come in there, and then you take some 22 gauge green wire and stick it up into your egg shape on these little eggs that you're creating. Once you have those little things on the wire, go ahead and make as many as you wish. Take your mud clay, your scrap clay, whatever clay you have left that is just, you're like, oh, I can't stand this stuff. Yeah, take it and use it for this. This is a great way to use your scrap clay, especially when it's turned to mud, and I get mud sometimes. So this is where I really like to use it. Once you've had these little clay eggs all made up though, go ahead and stick them in your oven at 275 degrees and bake these for about 15 to 20 minutes. I like to go a little longer because depending upon the size of the scrap egg that you made, it might be more than 1/4 of an inch. It depends on how big you get. I like to get a little big sometimes, but not overwhelming. And right here, I'm also bringing in some of my scrap clay that's not been turned to total mud. And I'll like to twist it just a little bit and then stick wire up into that. And this is the kind of egg that you don't have to then go ahead and do any kind of painting or anything to. It's finished. You could add in more, and I'll show you more as I get moving along here. I've also taken some more of my stripe. You could tell I had a lot of leftover scrap stripes in my, in my clay. So go ahead and roll that right over any of your little scrap clay. If you really want to think, oh, guess what? I've got this egg here. I like it. Let's just go ahead and add some more of my regular scrap that looks really pretty and throw that over my mud clay. Now, even though I'm using a lot of my scrap clay here and I brought my needle tool in, I thought I'm going to place this egg with a couple of like indents with my needle tool. We're going to have some fun with that later. But I thought let's also bring in some cane work. I had some leftover kaleidoscopes, and I have a lot of kaleidoscopes. But I thought let's go ahead and wrap a few of these up with, into an egg form and see what they look like as well. I suggest not only kaleidoscopes, but any kind of cane work that you want to just take slices of and wrap them into little tiny eggs. Do it. I think it's so much fun. Okay, so I want to go ahead and create the little signs for our pots. And so I've used a little bit of that liquid Sculpey. I've done my transfer technique. And if you want to see my transfer technique, I do have a video on that. I'll drop a link into my description area for that. But I'm going to take a little bit of my stripes here. This is from a stack. It was a blue and purple stack. And I want to say this stack was done in a number 4 setting on my Atlas pasta machine. And I'm just going to take pieces of this, line them up right next to each other, almost like I would a checker, except it's a little longer, right? I'm going to bring in my liquid Sculpey here, and I'm going to just place that on the back of my little sign here, and I'll put that down onto the stripes. Once I have that down on the stripes, I'll take my tissue blade and I'll go ahead and cut a nice straight line on top, on bottom, on the sides. And it'll be fairly narrow because I don't want this too big. I want to have a little bit of detail, but not a ton. And then once I have that put together, I'll have my sign and I'll rebake this again. So go ahead and make a few signs. I think you'll enjoy that. Again, here I have some more stripes, and these are like from my scrap clay. And I thought this would be a lot more fun even than the, from the stack, because this is just random pattern. And they really are kind of neat because if you take one little piece, it doesn't change too much with that scrap when you do the stripe thing. So I thought place another one next to it. And again, you're just going to mimic what I had done with the checker part. All right, so now we're going to start creating our first little eggplant. And notice here I'm taking out all my wires from what I had, to make the holes in the terracotta pots. All of my terracotta pots at this point, I will have baked them. And then I like to start bringing in some more wire. So I'll cut off some longer wire and I'll put that down on there. Part of it is because I want to see, one, I have kind of something to go off of. All right, and I can trim these back to figure out where then I want to place my eggs, kind of in, it's kind of like a florist. You're being a little bit of a florist here, where you go ahead and figure out how you stagger your eggs so they look and present so nicely in their little pots. Now here's the thing though, in doing so, I also like to take some of my wire, and as you saw me there, I curl it around. I like to create a few little curls in my pots too. I think it just adds to it. It gives it a nice feature that would not otherwise be. And in creating my little eggplant signs, sometimes I'll have, like I have here, I've got the toothpick, so we'll probably put the sign on there. But also the wires do present an opportunity, like if it doesn't work out, you can always use the wires as a way in which it can, the curled wire, to hold your little sign that says eggplant. Right here, I'm bringing in some of those clay eggs that I've baked up, and I'm just going to glue those right onto where I have the wires, okay? And they'll be staggered. As you can tell, I cut down my wires. Once I have these glued on here, I'm going to start bringing in my color shift paints and my metallic paints. And you can use the Fine Tech also. I found those work great, but they take a little longer in getting them done. And I have no patience. So I really like my metallic acrylics, and my metallic and my color shift. I really had a lot of fun with it. The metallic, I want to say the color shift ones, I used the green flash and the aqua flash, especially on the eggs. They just, oh man, I loved that effect. It looked great. And that's what I'm using right here. This is that color shift green flash paint, and I love the vibrance and just the flashy look of it. So break out your metallic paints if you have them, and go ahead and start painting these things. Now I do want to mention here that I brought in my black metallic, or I should say my black matte acrylic paint, and I did so because the more I looked at it, I thought the mud's great. You can paint right over it, but I also thought maybe if I painted it black, it might help it when it comes to applying the color just a little bit later. And I think it did help some. It made it where I didn't have to put as much coating on, whereas with the mud, it's like, okay, I have to add more and add more. So just a thought. Here I just wanted to show you guys that I did use my Fine Tech. I used my Twilight, which is one of the flip-floppers in that series. Anyway, I thought I'd go ahead and apply it onto my egg. And what I mean by it takes a little bit more time, it took a little bit to gather up the pigment from the little pan here, but once I got it on there, it was very beautiful. So I kept this one particular egg that I had painted with my Fine Tech watercolor paints. They are really fun. But again, I mainly kept with my metallics, you know, my acrylic paints. It was just a little bit faster for me to get through these. Okay, so the constant feature that I usually have in my little play on words pots is my leaves. You know, you gotta have the leaf in there to make it look like, okay, it's a real plant, right? Even though it is make-believe. So I create my simple little leaves, and I like to attach them in right at the base of where the eggs are themselves. And it's a nice little piece that just to me screams like, okay, this is more of a plant now and not just some eggs sticking out of a pot. So keep that in mind when you go ahead and create these. Create some fun little leaves. I think you're going to have some fun just placing them in and adding a nice little extra feature to your small eggs. Now with these little leaves that I'm putting in, yes, it is unbaked clay, so we're going to have to rebake this once more. And yes, I am using super glue. You can use your liquid Sculpey if you wish. I just get kind of into this thing where if I'm dealing with wire or any other kind of element other than clay, I like to use my super glue because I know it's going to hold in a little bit better. However, that said, clay on clay, yes, your liquid Sculpey would probably be the better route. This being a miniature though and not being jewelry, it doesn't matter quite so much. So keep that in mind. Also, I'm going to be gluing in my little sign here with my eggplant onto my little toothpick. And then from here, I'll go ahead and add in little details with my acrylic paints. One more little added note here. I decided to create a couple more eggs. One, I thought, why not put one right at the top of the sign? What the heck? And then I also put one right down in the base of the pot itself. So add in eggs wherever you want. That's the fun part about these. These are total make-believe. You just have a blast with it. So from here, I'm just going to go ahead and let you guys watch my hands talk as I finish up this first little eggplant pot. All right, so now we're going to start creating our second little eggplant, and I'm going to admit here this was my most, or I should say my least favorite pot. And I think it was because when I went to go do it, I used my clay eggs where they had the pattern on them, either from a kaleidoscope or from other kinds of clay canes, and they worked great. Don't get me wrong, okay? I like those, but I think it was around the actual pot itself. I put the sign for this particular eggplant on the rim of the terracotta pot. Now, usually that's where I like to place my little sign that says eggplant or passion fruit or whatever, right? But I have found I really am starting to like those little tiny signs I could just embed into the terracotta pot. They're so much more fun. I could do a little bit more detail work with them if I want. And I only placed 3 little eggs into this terracotta pot. I thought it would work out great. And really, in the end, it did. And a lot of it that saved this particular pot was going in with the detail with my acrylic paints. So as you can see there, I put my little eggplant sign on the rim, okay? And that was done with my transfer technique. I'll go ahead and put a little link to it in the description area. And then I brought in some scrap clay kind of stripes. I'm gonna put that around my little terracotta pot. I thought it would be a neat little feature. I'm using my liquid clay to adhere it down clay to clay. And you know, when I got it done, it wasn't as pretty as I was hoping. And I think part of this was because I probably should have made those little stripes like a very tiny row of little stripes. I think that might have helped a little bit more. But it is what it is, right? Anyway, I'm bringing that in. It's going to go around the pot. I will add in a couple of bullseyes around the sign. I thought maybe that might help it. But in the end, the thing was, I think that saved the eggplant design in my mind was going to be with my color shift green flash paint, and it really did. I brought in and I started doing it heavily on the leaves. I thought, let's start there. Colored half of the leaf with that shift, and holy cow, I really liked it. It brought the whole plant to life. From here, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys watch my hands talk once more as I complete up this second eggplant. My third eggplant miniature pot to me was very different from the first 2. And the reason is because I brought in cane work, and I did, you know, originally sort of with the last one I used, you know, the canes, but this time around I took it in a different way. What I did here was this particular egg was painted with my acrylic paint. I took a piece of my regular stack, thinned it out, wrapped it around the design, added in some bullseyes on that particular stripe area, and then I also added in a few little indented black dots, okay, on this egg. Then I brought in my segmented cane and my leaf canes. And in adding in my leaf canes right underneath the little egg, it gave me the detail I was really looking for. I was trying to create some of that detail with the paint, but boy, this really made it so much easier because I didn't have to really make that detail. It was already in the cane itself. So I added in a few to this particular egg. And then with my segmented canes, I went ahead and cut slices from these canes that I had. And I placed them, these slices, up and around the egg that I had formed already. But I did not cover the entire egg. I only did a portion of it, leaving that nice metallic effect from the paint on top, and it almost made it look like a bit of a flower like a bud or something instead of an egg. But that was kind of the intent here. And then once I had these petals around on this egg, now I did not do it with these, but you could do it. You could just leave one of those petals off and let it fall over, almost like it was unfolding, like a flower would normally unfold. But then I brought in my leaf cane and I thought, let's just go ahead and add this in. We don't want to get too bulky. And so that's what I did. I added in my leaf cane right here, and I just absolutely loved how the detail in those canes made this all come together. Now I want to mention something here with this third pot. I had these eggs kind of arranged in here, and two of them were not exactly, they were getting in the way of my sign. And I thought, how do I make this work? So I just kind of bent those wires over, almost like the flowers or the egg flowers here were heavy and they were drooping, and then it's almost like the leaves themselves acted as petals, if you will. So your leaf cane can double as a petal cane in this regard. I thought it was really fun. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys watch my hands talk as I finish up this third pot with a little bit of paint. Okay, so my fourth and final eggplant is my favorite. Oh yes, that's, you know, I saved the best for last. What can I say? So I'm bringing in my pot. I'm going to go ahead and stick in my wires, get that kind of going. But the big thing about this particular pot was I stuck those wires in with purpose because I wanted to make sure that there was enough, you know, of a hole there that I could stick wires in later, because we're going to fill up this pot right away with some bigger kinds of mud eggs, right? We're going to put those into the pot themselves, and then we're going to create a fun little feature that I did not have in the other three pots at all, and that was my bunny. And no, I know, I can't help it, I get happy with my bunny. But it's not really a bunny per se, like a pure bunny. It's like more like a bunny butt. I always wanted to say that. Bunny butt, yes. I know I'm cracking my own self up. Anyways, I'm going to put these eggs into this pot, and I'm just going to arrange them. There's going to be 3 of those in there. And then we're going to form up a little bunny body, and you'll see what I did. Okay, so I'm bringing in some white clay, and I'm going to make this ball. It's going to be a ball at first, and then I'm going to make it into a little teardrop form. I'm going to place that right in there, and I'm going to push it in a little bit so we can find, you know, make that little body part, okay? And then I'm going to make 2 little tinier teardrops and a third one, and we're going to take two of the little drops, and we're going to make them where the drops kind of hang down, and they're going to be pointed on the one end, so it's almost a little bit of a diamond-like look, but not quite. We'll place one on one side, one on the other. This will be the feet of our little rabbit who's buried in our little pot. And then I'm going to take the other little teardrop, actually it's going to be a ball, and then I bring in my tweezers and I start tweezing or just kind of picking at that little ball, which is his little white tail. And I love this feature. To me, it was the best part of this whole thing. I love the idea of the little bunny in here. Now, once I have that little bunny in there the way I like him, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to bake this whole thing. And I suggest baking this thing for about, 15 to 20 minutes. So you need to really make sure those eggs, because if they're 1/4 of an inch thick, you want to make sure they are solidly baked all the way through. Same with the little bunny. You got to make sure he's baked through too. And then I'm just forming up some more eggs. I'm going to put one egg coming right out of the top of the pot. And that's the only other egg I'm going to add into this particular pot. However, I'm going to go ahead and make a bunch of other little mud eggs, and I'm going to put little wires right in the bottom of each of them. We're going to make sure those are all baked up. We're going to bake up our larger pot there too with the big eggs, and then take those eggs and the bunny out of the pot. Once you do that, cut some of your 22 gauge wire. You're going to glue that down into the center of your terracotta pot. Then you're going to come in with those eggs and the bunny there. You're going to try and take your bunny apart from those eggs, and then we're going to go ahead and paint the eggs and then place the eggs back into the pot once they're painted, and then add in the bunny as well. Now in this last eggplant design, I have 3 wires coming out of this pot, and I decided to take the 2 outer wires and curl them around into that nice little curl I always love to do, and then the center wire will be used for putting a larger kind of egg on the top. I thought that would be such a fun piece to do, make it into a bit of a flower sort of a thing with a few bullseye clay slices that I can place on that egg and just finish it up that way. Okay, so at this point, once I got the egg on there, I started painting the egg, but then I also decided let's go ahead and paint in the little details on the feet of our bunny. So I made 3 little pink areas there, almost looking like those are his toes, and then of course the 4th one, which is a little longer and a little bigger, which is the main part of his foot. Once I had the painting kind of finished up to this point, I decided to bring in my leaf green clay and then start filling in on the pot with some leaves. Now, yes, these leaves are unbaked, so we need to, as soon as you get done placing those leaves into the terracotta pot, you need to go ahead and also place in the little bullseyes you're going to put on the egg. Once you have all of that on there, you're going to then go ahead and bake your terracotta pot once more for about 7 to 10 minutes. All right, so now for the fun part. I had some leftover mud clay and I thought, I just want to use some of this up. So I decided to make a fairly large log, right? I patted it down onto the surface of my tile here, and then I took my terracotta pot and I kind of embedded it down into that log, if you will, right? And I made this indent so this way then I know exactly where that terracotta pot is going to go, right? Anyway, once I got that done, I brought in some of my 22 gauge wire and I started just poking a bunch of holes all over this piece. I thought, well, what the heck, might as well. And what I'm going to do is then I've got placement to put in a bunch of little eggs coming out of it. Yes, why, those eggs that I'm going to put on the stem, yes, we're going to put them all over this thing. So right here I had used some Emerald Flash, my color shift paint, to go ahead and paint that up. And just for a clarification here, this piece has already been baked. So, I baked it for another, I want to say at least a good 10 minutes, just to make sure it was a solid base and it was all baked through and through. Once I had it painted up, I decided to also make a larger egg and a smaller egg and kind of glue it into the top of this piece. I thought it'd be a nice little feature. So make eggs, make them on stem, make them by themselves or with, groupings, if you will, and place it into this piece where you can make it all one solid unit. It makes it much more fun than just a terracotta pot. It becomes a little scene unto itself then. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys watch my hands talk one last time so we can finish up this fourth and final eggplant design. right, so this is the end result of creating my eggplants in polymer clay. Please use this for study and reference. And if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and leave me a comment. I'm always wondering what you're thinking. Otherwise, I am sending out my biggest hugs to each of you, and I hope you have a fantastic, ecstatic day.